Hi, I'm Charles Mcgavin. I work as an advocate in child protection cases around the country mostly. I work in the interests ultimately of children, but more generally for the entire family. If the family is strong and functional, the child grows up having strong bonds, achieves their milestones and becomes a productive member of society. I've been learning about and researching the child protection system in Australia now for about 10 years. I have been actively advocating for children and families for about 5 of those years. Today I'm going to tell you about what I have seen personally. Unfortunately, time only allows me to present a small fraction of what I've seen, but I hope it raises enough awareness to make you want to learn more. In my opinion, the biggest abusers of children in Australia are governments, both state and federal. They facilitate legislation that allows rogue lawyers, rogue judges, police and others to use the system to fabricate evidence that ultimately results in the worst outcomes for children. In each of the states, this is led by departments of child protection, who are assisted by the Children's Court, Police, Department of Education and Department of Health. Federally, it is the Family Court of Australia and the Federal Police. Let's start with the federal system. We all know that the Family Court destroys families and places children in danger by awarding custody to child perpetrators. And I want to make it quite clear here that perpetrators are not always male. There are plenty of female perpetrators. This is not a gender-based issue. If anything, it is financially based or who you are connected with that will determine if you win or lose in the family court. I believe family court judges are delusional. The definition of delusion is a belief that is maintained despite evidence to the contrary, and it is often a symptom of a mental disorder. Family court judges can't see what you and I see clearly. These judges seem to be blind to the facts when allegations of child abuse are presented. Or is it that that decisions are made outside of the courtroom, or perhaps not even by the judges presiding over the case? I don't know what's really going on, but I raise these issues because anecdotally this is what seems to be happening. And this occurs in many cases. It's not much wonder that Australians have been calling loudly for a Royal Commission into the family court for so long. And what I suggest is, if what I suggest is going on, then it's no surprise why the government is resisting a Royal Commission so strongly, because it means they lose power, control and money if the public ever discovers the extreme manipulation and cover-ups in many of these cases. That's also the reason for Section 121 of the Family Law Act. Don't dare speak about these cases, or you will be hauled before the court for identifying these cases where clearly the judiciary is protecting pedophiles. Let me tell you about some friends of mine, Dr. Russell Pridgeon, Patrick O'Day and a grandmother from Townsville who I can't name for legal reasons. These people were among a group of individuals who were arrested as part of federal Operation Noetic in 2018. That's Noetic. There were others too, but these people I know personally. Go and Google this operation because it is indicative of what is happening in Australia right now. The template that was used by the AFP is replicated in the States, but I will get to that soon. The AFP alleged that several parents fled with their children contrary to family court orders. These parents claim they had no choice because pedophile protecting family court judges had placed their children back with their perpetrators. A mother and her twin daughters managed to elude police for 4 years. These girls had disclosed sexual abuse at the hands of their father. They had made more than 40 disclosures to 14 different people, many of them mandatory reporters. Yet this evidence was prevented from being heard by the court. Eventually their paths crossed with those of Dr. Russell Pridgeon and Patrick O'Day, who attempted to do the right thing, keep the children and parents safe and report the abuse to the authorities. The twins described recurrent, painful and recurring ulcers on their private parts that Dr. Pridgeon said could only have been genital herpes. Their father was known to have this condition. Dr. Pridgeon made contact with Di Farmer, the then Minister for Child Safety in Queensland, notifying her of the situation and begging her to intervene. Her response was to block his ability to communicate with her. But Dr. Pridgeon found ways around this by sending her 4 further emails from different addresses. Di Farmer still refused to take any action. In a separate similar case, a grandmother had lawful custody of her grandson. At the time she was located, she too was subsequently charged. Her grandson had previously disclosed ongoing sexual abuse by his father in detail, yet the family court saw fit to return the child to the perpetrator. The grandmother saw no other way to ensure the safety of her child but to separate him from the abusive situation. The result was that these people have been charged with conspiracy and child stealing charges, among others. They have had multiple appearances before the court already, and the cases have been committed to trial with no date currently set. The case consists of a large brief of evidence, the largest brief of evidence ever presented in Australia. It is about 1 terabyte worth of evidence on a drive. Most so-called evidence is rubbish, designed as filler to frustrate the ability to search through the real evidence. All of these people have entered pleas of not guilty. Both the girls and the grandson were returned to their respective fathers. The abuse continues on to this day, and the latest news is that one of the girls is suicidal and the other is self-harming. The grandson expects his next meeting with his grandmother to be in heaven, and he has told her that. At this point, I'd like to give you a warning. I will be playing a recording shortly that you may find distressing, so this is a trauma warning. You may like to cover your ears or those of your young children when I play it. I have come to the conclusion that state-based authorities, like their federal counterparts, are operating as organised crime syndicates. Most of the cases I work on now have that characteristic about them. Departments of Child Protection, Police, Department of Education especially, and Department of Health conspire to fabricate evidence in order to remove children and keep them permanently in out-of-home care. There are hundreds of non-government entities that rely on income that is generated by children who are removed. In fact, it is estimated that 4 out of 5 children in the out-of-home care system were never at risk of harm and should never have been removed. A mother came to me earlier this year who had 5 of her 8 children removed. We looked into the case, and due to the evidence that she had captured in text messages, recordings and videos, along with documentation provided by DCJ in New South Wales, we determined that the case was a setup. This has had second and third opinions as well to support our assessment, so it's not as if we are making things up. We identified that a DCJ casework manager colluded with police detectives and 2 pedophiles to fabricate a case against the mother and her new husband, causing the husband to be charged for offences committed by another man who made an admission that he was a pedophile perpetrator. He sexually assaulted a 12-year-old girl. The man making the admission made it several times to several people, including a lawyer. Then suddenly changed his admission to being that he had urges. We believe this was coerced by the police to protect the pedophiles. I'm going to play the original admission shortly with some minor edits to protect the identity of those who are innocent. One of the mother's children who was removed was placed with one of these pedophiles by DCJ in New South Wales. In their own paperwork, this is how they describe him and his living conditions. His home is reported to be hazardous for the children, with mice and rat infestation, PowerPoints hanging out of the walls, and accessible drugs, drug paraphernalia and weapons. He has friends who visit the home who have allegedly engaged in sexual relationships with girls under the age of 16, including getting them to perform sexual acts on video when under the legal age of consent. Now remember, This is someone who DCJ has placed a child with. There are actually 3 childs with this perpetrator. Okay.
Just making a complaint that I've been accused of sexual assault. Yes, I've done it. I penetrated her the first time, I fingered her the second time, and I touched her breast the third time. And also with Kenny, he knew that this was going on. He didn't make any attempt to make any stop towards it, and he said that if I pay him $1,000, he won't go to the police to say anything, and he's very violent towards the kids, and he never remarked that he was violent, but that $1,000 that I give him, he went to pay off his road debt, and then he accused of the same situation, and he's ended up in jail for something he hasn't done.
So what can we do about this? We need to get loud. We need to not shut up. When we suspect the authorities are not acting in good faith, we need to call them out. Stacey Maloney, in her new role of sex crimes boss in New South Wales, we believe is aware of this case. We have asked for it to be escalated to her. To date, she has done nothing. Stacey, if you really stand true to the role you have taken on and you haven't heard about it, then I invite you to make contact. I can assure you we are not going away. For the sake of our children, we have to keep speaking out. Thank you.